Do you know where your net worth is at? It can be a very helpful figure when it comes to calculating net worth. Ideally and traditionally, we see your wealth or your net worth grow over time as you gain more wealth, have more investments, and of course, eliminate debt. But where should you be at any point in your life? So, in today's live stream, we're going to be looking at the different milestones based on where you should be on really on average when it comes to net worth. So, how exactly do you calculate that net worth? It is everything you own, so your assets minus your liabilities. It is that easy. And this is a metric that people like to do every year to just to know exactly where you are and if you're building or losing wealth over time. Now, when you start looking at assets, we are thinking everything. We're talking about your home, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, investments, cash, valuables, collectibles, everything. And then, of course, minus whatever that mortgage balance is, your auto loan balances, student loans, other credit card, anything that essentially is a liability, that is something that can be against you, is really broken down. So when we think of an average net worth in America, the average net worth is $1,059,470. So just north of $1 million. That is according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances. But we want to look at both. I want to look at the average net worth based on age, and we're going to do this a decade at a time. And then also I want to look at the median net worth. Now, a lot of people have said average net worth can be skewed greatly by people that have a very, very high net worth. That is what skews it. So when we start looking at the median for a specific decade or a specific age, it is more of what is normal or what is average that I want to go through. So first, we're going to start with our 20s. So this is the age where the age 20 years old, average net worth 113K, median net worth $7,000. So think about this for a minute. This is the point in your life in the 20s. Let's say you're going to school, you're finishing college, you're 22, 23, 24, you're finally done with school, you're starting out at entry level, or you're starting in a career for yourself. Average net worth, again, 113K. This is where it's skewed by people that might have trust funds that have an absorbent amount of money, because when we look at the median net worth, and again, that's the one we're going to focus on a lot more, it is around $7,000. Now, when you start thinking of this generation being in your 20s, most people carry student loans. So what we've been seeing as it sits today is people are waiting 5, 10, 15 years to actually start things in their life, short of that career, starting families, buying houses. Everything is being pushed further because of the cost. When you think of getting out of college, let's say you're 6 months out of college, you have, $50, $100, $150,000 in student loans. When those payments start coming in, that immediately kind of takes away the ability to put money into larger things in life. If you're looking at vacation, if you're looking at a wedding, if you're planning for kids, if you're looking at purchasing a house, a lot of that, again, is being set back because of the ability to essentially not save because of student loan debt, which in my opinion, guys, is a really, really big issue that we have in the United States. The cost of education shouldn't be as high as it is. But overall, a lot of people that are going to school and getting an education are not even using the degree that they're getting, whatever they're getting it in. There are some specialized, whether, doctors, lawyers, things of that nature, that do require advanced degrees, that do require specialization. But a lot of people that just have basic degrees, a lot of them don't use their degree at all, even though they paid an exorbitant amount of money for them. So then we get into the next decade, which goes into our 30s. Now you can see average net worth went from 113 to 317. So we're definitely seeing a little bit of rise in the average net worth. And thinking of 30s to 40s, this is usually the time when most people are buying a house. Housing prices, we know over the last couple of years, have been increasing. This is also where you kind of solidify and get a little bit more established in your career. This could be making regular 401k contributions. This could be IRA contributions, HSA. Average net worth starting to go up here, but you'll also notice median net worth 35K. Still, I mean, we're talking at this point, if you're, mid to late 30s, you've been working for roughly 20 years of your life, median net worth 35K. Again, still impacted by student loans. If you're at the point, let's say you purchased a house, you're moving to a house, you're starting a family, a lot more expenses start coming out of this, a lot more credit card debt. Even looking at the credit card debt right now, I believe the last time I checked, it was $1.14 million or trillion, with a T, that we were seeing in credit card debt. When you start looking at the exorbitant cost of things that it sits today, it does get very, very expensive. Then we get into our 40s. This is the point where I am at, mid 40s. And of course, this is where you're more established in your career. You've been already 20, 25 years, possibly 30 years in the workforce itself. You're getting a little bit further. You're getting some raises, some promotions, starting to get into middle or upper management. And this is the point average net worth goes to 791K. Median still 125. So we are just over that $100,000 mark. And even thinking in your 40s, where if you're mid 30s, you purchased a home, you're starting to pay that 30-year mortgage down, and you're starting to accumulate some net worth. We've had another decade to go ahead and make 401k contributions, really started building up that nest egg a little bit. This is when a lot of people, the 30s and 40s combination of starting a family, starting to have kids in school, starting to have a lot more expenses, and a lot more things do come with that. Then we get into our 50s. For a lot of people, the 50s are really the years, and unfortunately at this point, when a lot of people start thinking about retirement, the mid to early 40s are really when people start buckling down, start really saving. And at that point, even though it's great, you're starting to invest in those 401k plans. We're doing a lot more IRA contributions. The retirement planning is on the horizon. However, when you think of compounding interest, you're about 10 or 15, maybe even 20, 25 years too late to the party to have the real huge impact that we need to see to grow this net worth. And that is because the compounding interest. If you started in your 20s doing regular contributions, getting compounding in the 30s, getting compounding interest in the 40s, now you're into the 50s. Median goes to 288. So again, when you think of the median, you are thinking of the average. We're around 300K. This is the point where you might have 10, 12, 15 years paid off of mortgage. Usually by the time you hit 40s and 50s, student loan debt, hopefully at that point, if you're not on that 30-year program that people do have, student debt is pretty much eliminated at this point. And you might even get to the point where you might have children that are starting to go to college that is going to reacquire that student debt that you worked the last 10 or 15 years to get rid of in the entirety. And like I said, at this point, you're starting to look at 401k balances getting a lot higher. You're seeing the effects of the compounding interest. Hopefully you're mitigating and eliminating debt in its entirety, because this is the point. When you start thinking of the ability within the next decade to retire, if you're 62, 65, 67, that is the point you want to make sure that you have everything in line. And honestly, when you get to the late 40s, early 50s, that is the time to get everything kind of set and know exactly your plan, know your financial plan, know exactly how you're going to go into retirement, what it's going to look like. Now is the time to plan it. Like I said, for me, mid 40s, getting ready and knowing exactly what point in life that we do want to retire, when the house is going to be paid off, when we're going to be debt free in the entirety. And even looking at this at 288K on that median net worth, still not getting over that retirement bubble. When people are saying roughly 1.2 to $1.4 million to retire or to retire comfortably, we are not even breaching or getting close to that number. Then we get into our 60s. This is the point, and this is honestly the only point looking in here that your balances are going to be the highest when you hit retirement. So again, thinking of 62, that is the point that you can start claiming Social Security. 65, 67 is the full retirement age if you're going that long. But when you get into the 60s, this is when a majority of people do retire. Now, of course, average net worth 1.7 million, median net worth 439. So 439K, as you see right there, that is the average that individuals do have saved, which means you're just south of $500,000. And they estimate this isn't going to last the entire retirement if it does not grow properly. Now, for a lot of people, roughly 30% of Americans, they're going into retirement with zero, with absolutely nothing saved at this point, meaning they're kind of skewing the average on either the over or the under. So if you have a big chunk of Americans that are going into retirement or still carry an incredible amount of debt, it is difficult. When I see it with individuals, when I sit down and do financial education and financial counseling, it's interesting to see when I see individuals that are going into retirement with mortgages, let's say 5, 10, 15, even 20. I have even seen individuals during retirement that will do and refinance to a 30-year mortgage, knowing that by the time, if they're in their 60s, 30 years down the road to pay that off, you're just leaving that problem to someone else. Because most of us, unfortunately, little bit morbid, but will not live until the mid to late 90s, which unfortunately that is very true. So when we start looking at this, this is the point when you start relying on your retirement. This is when you start using a lot of that net worth. This is the point, again, a lot of people have the houses paid down or paid off in the entirety, but this is where you start drawing those accounts. Thinking of the 401k plans, HSAs, thinking of the IRAs, this is the point when you start actually taking money out and the net worth starts going negative or starts dropping at this point. Not quite to negative yet, but this is the point that your net worth in its entirety does start dropping when we get into our 70s. And you'll see here your 1.7 goes to 1.6. Median here drops. I mean, we're talking $40,000, $70,000. So again, median net worth during your 70s drops $70,000. This, and a lot of it is going into health. When you look at the ability to supplement your Medicare plan, when you look at your health costs, when you look at, assisted living, anything of that nature, the cost is incredible. They estimate that by the time you retire to the time you pass, you will spend about $80,000 for just medical costs alone. You're not including anything else, again, like assisted living or anything of that nature. You are looking at just sheer medical costs, with the average being around $80,000, which again is kind of crazy. Median net worth again goes to 367. So it is dropping a little bit because we're at the point where we're utilizing all of those accounts to supplement Social Security. When we look at Social Security in the entirety, it was meant to replace around 40% of the income. But if you look at the cost of goods and really consumer price index, everything else we have going on in the world, Social Security is replacing about 20 to 25% of the income. Now, it's also estimated during retirement that if you're making $100,000 a year before you get into retirement, by the time you get into retirement, you should theoretically be able to live on 80% of your income, meaning that $100,000 income goes down to $80,000. And of course, Social Security is covering about $30,000 of that, which leaves a very, very large gap for those IRA accounts, those investment accounts that people are now living on. So when we get into our 80s, this is where we get to 1.5 million on that average net worth. And of course, median goes down to 342. So we dropped about another $25,000 in the median net worth. Now, this, of course, is the point when you're planning everything. So what I mean by that is when you start getting in your 70s and 80s, this is the time to make sure that you have everything in place. When you're looking for beneficiaries for accounts, are you setting up a trust? Are you setting up an estate? What exactly do you have in place, knowing that if you're sitting, and again, median net worth at 342, how is that money going to get past your heirs? Are you giving it to your children? What are the plans for the funds that you still have here? Because ultimately, is it going to be kids? Is it going to be grandkids? What is it going to look like? What are your wishes when you do pass? And then we get into the 90s, which is the final one we're going to look at. But looking at here, again, $1.2 million here. Average, or the median net worth, drops below that 300K mark because a majority of this money is being used up in its entirety. And even then, from the time you retire to the time that you're 90, again, if you live that long, we dropped about $140,000 on the median net worth. So on average, when it comes to individuals. So how does it change, and what really adjusted over time? Whether your net worth is really positive or negative is really, it's not uncommon to have a negative net worth, and it's not something that is looked or frowned upon when you're younger. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, net worth will increase over time. This naturally comes from compounding interest. If you're making contributions, again, into those 401k plans, regular into the HSAs, when you start acquiring more assets, when you have a higher income, when you start eliminating debt, and honestly, the biggest thing to change your net worth in its entirety is, in my opinion, the elimination of debt. When we start looking about this, and when we think about net worth in overall, you have your income, you have essentially your liabilities or what you have to pay. Whatever you have in that third bucket is going to give you the ability to change your net worth and build your net worth over time. Now, this, of course, if you have a bigger income, if you're starting to earn more money, if you have a higher paycheck, if you have multiple income streams like I have here on YouTube, and of course, if you like the content that I'm putting out, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. But when you have additional income and you have the ability to eliminate or pay off debt, that is less interest you're paying. That is more money that you get to keep. And that is really the equation. When you think about getting back to the basics of the wants and the needs, what exactly can you eliminate? What can you pay less for? What can you get to the point of having this right back here of the debt-free journey? How does the plan look for you? Now, when we start looking again later in life, best ways to grow net worth, number one, emergency fund. I don't do many videos that we don't mention the emergency fund. And the simple fact is, this is the stable foundation when it comes to finances, being able to cover expenses that come out in your life without having to borrow additional money. Getting to that 3 to 6 months of net worth, or excuse me, 3 to 6 months of that emergency fund are essential, because when a true emergency happens, and trust me, there will be a point in your life, regardless of who you are, that you will have a true emergency. You have the ability to pay that emergency, take care of it without having to borrow additional money, which can be very, very expensive. Now, of course, the other way, paying down debt, that is one that we just talked about. Being able to eliminate the liability column will give you more income in the long run, cutting out your expenses, increasing your income, some other easy ways to really get in there. And then, of course, what we talk about on this channel, investing. Investing has made more millionaires. And when you think of self-made millionaires, over 90% of self-made millionaires were from investing. You might have the one-offs that are real estate investors or investing in properties, things of that nature. Some people who hit it really big with cryptocurrency. But when you look at you and I, the meaningful progression towards your net worth growing over decades is tax advantage retirement accounts, IRAs, 401k plans. They add benefits of tax advantages, which I don't really go in. I don't like the tax advantages, the tax savings that we see. The reason being, I do the Roth options. When we think about the 401ks and the IRAs, I always choose, and I really recommend to anyone that I do financial counseling for, to go ahead and do the Roth variation. Now, the reason for this is when you think of the future, you don't know exactly what that account is going to grow to. You don't know what the tax bracket looks like in the future. So people are saying, I want the added tax benefit today to kick that tax burden down the road to the point that I get to retirement, where I'm going to have to essentially pay that bill through RMDs. I'm going to have to pay it, and I'm going to have to take that money, and I'm going to have to pay tax on that money, regardless if I need that money or not. You're still going to have to take it out of those accounts. Now, of course, when we start thinking of 401ks, I stress number one, and always number one, if your employer offers a match, you have to put in the basic match. This is really before anything else, because I see people who do not put in money for that employer match. 3 to 5 years later, they still have some bills around, still trying to eliminate a couple things Dave Ramsey style. And of course, they missed 5 years of contributions into that 401k. All of a sudden, I meet with them again. We're 10 or 15 years down the road. It is the exact same thing. They haven't, or they've started at a very small manner, or they're not getting the employer match at all. Even when we look at Vanguard and some of the very large 401k providers, there's no place where 100% of really team members, employees, whatever they are, whatever you want to call them, are getting the employer match in its entirety when a company does offer it. You do have to be aware when it comes to that employer match, there could be a couple things in there, including a vesting period where you have to stay with the company a certain amount of time, or they take back those contributions. But it is the only place that you're going to get a 100% guaranteed return on the money that you're putting on in those investment accounts. And when we think about net worth in a much larger picture, protecting your assets, this is after working hard, many years growing that net worth. This is where ensuring your family, your friends, your property, anything that you need to insure, make sure that it is prepped. Make sure the estate planning is done, knowing your beneficiaries, having a will if it's needed. There are a lot of different ways to maintain and really build generational net worth, which is exactly what I'm looking to do. As much as I do love sharing all this information for you, it is information, and that's exactly what it is. So regardless of where your net worth is, you can kind of see, and it's a really good point, and it's a really good check-in point for a lot of individuals to see exactly where their net worth is growing, where they can cut back a little. Are they on par with the average? Are you staying and really going above and beyond that average to make sure that you have money and you're investing for your future? So, all right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's live stream. Definitely let me know in the comments if you have any questions about net worth. And as always, thank you guys for watching.